At Goku's home, Chi-Chi was busy serving tea to their guests. Gero thanked her for her hospitality, as 16 remained silent. 17 and 18 declined, saying that they were more into soda than tea. In an instant, Fascia appeared, grabbing Chi-Chi and throwing her back. Gero was surprised. He wasn't expecting anyone to try that. A blast from 16 came her way, but she yelled out for Shigesh, who teleported Chi-Chi out of there. Gero, damned the world, said that it didn't matter. Chi-Chi was frightened, telling Shigesh to get his hands off of her, but Krillin made sure to get her to calm down when she reached the lookout. Piccolo and Fascia stood their ground, face to face with a mechanical menace. But before fighting, Piccolo channels Nail and reminds Fascia about what she learned on Namek: peace, calmness, strategy over brutality. She needed to focus for this battle. Fascia felt Nail's ki within Piccolo more than ever, even if it was shared with Kami. It inspired her to get into her battle stance, and under her breath, she apologized to Goku for trashing his home. Piccolo rushed at 17 and Fascia at 18, while 16 watched nearby. They crashed through the wall and onto the outside of the property. Fascia was doing a lot better, finally getting used to 18's fighting style, and on her end, 18 was having a little bit more trouble. After all, they've already fought twice, and Fascia was getting stronger than the last time they met. As Piccolo continued to exchange blows with 17, 18 attempts to land some blows on Fascia. However, the Saiyan parries punches and responds with her own counterattacks. Fascia confidently states that she's not the same Saiyan as she was before, crashing her palm straight onto 18's jaw. Fascia throws a volley of ki blasts at Android 18, which forces her to open her barrier. Fascia smirks. This was the opening she was waiting for. As the barrier dissipates, Fascia suddenly appears before 18, kicking straight into her gut before performing a haymaker, which sends the blonde cyborg hurling into a forest beneath them. After fighting the androids multiple times now, Fascia picked out a crucial flaw. When the androids activate their barrier, there's a brief moment of time where they're left wide open as they close it down. The fights continue until an SS Deadly Bomber crashes between the fighters. They look back around, and to their surprise, they see Android 13, Gero, and a new creature. Piccolo fears the worst. This is the villain he had been looking for. Gero explained that this was the prior agreement that he was talking about. He welcomed Cell from the future and told him to have at it, absorb the twins, and become the ultimate life form that he was created to be. Before they even knew it, Cell launched himself at Android 18. 13 throws his hat at Gero and tells him to take good care of it as he bulks up into his super state. Super Android 13 bulldozes into 17, which takes the wind out of him. Fascia and Piccolo tried to do what they could to get them away from the twins. They were extremely overwhelmed. Gero ordered 16 to attack as well, but he hesitated. He had spent so much time with the twins, something deep inside him was compelling him to stop. But Gero continued to bark orders at him. Meanwhile, in the tundra, Goku wakes up. He jumps to his feet, ready to throw a punch, but realizes that he's at Tsuno's home. With Ader, he was very cold. He felt like he had just been revived. And in a way he was. He was nearly dead. As Tsuno explained, she had to dive down, get him out, and Ader had to shock his heart back. But he was okay. Goku cursed. He couldn't believe that he let himself be defeated by that android. But that transformation, that was something impressive. What he needed to do now is return to the lookout and train himself to be above him. But first, he needed to do what he came here for. He looked over at Ader, asking him if he was willing to go to Capsule Corp and get himself examined by Bulma and Fascia. Fascia, after all, was a mechanic, and she was very interested in this sort of thing. Ader agreed. He had recognized that android. He was nothing but lines of code when Ader was finished, but he knew that number. Android 13. If Ader could do anything to help Goku out, he would. He also asked if he could get his bomb taken out from inside of him. He thought it was a miracle that hadn't exploded yet. Remember, in the manga, they never took out Ader's bomb, so he's just been living there with a bomb inside of him the entire time. It's kinda weird. Goku thanks Tsuno, telling her that he'd visit soon. He teleported over to Capsule Corp, leaving Ader in the care of Dr. Briefs. Goku returned to the lookout after dropping off Ader, and he happily looked around, but then realized that Gohan was looking worried. Then, Tora yelled at Goku, chastising him for making him worry so much. Goku told him that he was as good as he could be after getting beat up by that android. Tora sighs and looks at Goku in the eyes, telling him that he wouldn't know what to do if anything happened to him. Goku smiled, and then he got pulled into a hug by Chi-Chi. Goku screams in pain. He hasn't fully healed just yet, but he asked what Chi-Chi's doing up there. She explains that some people came to visit her, and then she appeared over here. Goku couldn't imagine who would visit at this time, and then he realized she was almost taken hostage by Dr. Gero. After getting healed by Dende, Goku explains to everyone what had happened in the tundra. Tora, Borgos, and even Tien feel weak and useless. They were warriors, and yet their enemies never seemed to stop getting stronger. Goku reassured his friends but there was a way to get stronger quickly. Had they forgotten? They still had the Room of Spirit and Time. Goku asked Gohan if he'd like to go with him, but the fighters at the lookout start to notice drastic changes in ki. The battle in Mount Paozu was really starting to heat up. Could feel an enormous monstrous ki. Tora told Goku that he and Gohan needed to go training ASAP. Goku agreed, as he and his son started to get ready to go into the chamber. Borgos and Tien gritted their teeth. There was nothing they could do. Were they really expected to stay in the lookout this entire time and watch their friends die? Tien yelled out that he wouldn't do that. He couldn't stand back. Borgos silently nodded. Tora tried to talk them out of it. They were adamant in leaving. Borgos looked at Tora, just for a moment. That moment seemed like an eternity. He gave him a weak smile. Before he could say anything else, Tien and Borgos jumped off the tower and rocketed towards the battlefield. Super 13 locked 17 into a bear hug. As he yelled out for Cell, supper was ready. Cell wastes no time in extending his tail and swallowing 17 whole. Cell glows and transforms into his semi-perfect state. He feels a rush of new power and stares at 18. She was next. Fascia and Piccolo step up, telling her to run. The pair try their best to hold off Cell, but they stand even less of a chance against this demon. Cell tossed both of the fighters aside like a rag, telling 13 to take care of them. He extends his tail over to 18, but two fighters appear before him, Tien and Borgos. Gero grits his teeth. Another Saiyan? This was starting to get ridiculous. Cell laughs at Tien for showing his face, and 13 looks quietly over at Borgos, while he smashes Piccolo's and Fascia's face against each other. This guy wasn't in Gero's database. Borgos was shaking violently. He looked over at Fascia, who was lying bloody on the floor. He then looked over at Piccolo, who reminded him so much of his master, Nail. Pure, seething rage was building up within Borgos. Then, snap. He roared and trees beneath him began to shake, with birds flying away in panic. His ki burst open, and his hair turned golden. He looked at Cell and 13 with a vicious glare. They wouldn't get away with hurting his friends. Gero nearly made his palm bleed as he balled up his fist. A Super Saiyan bargain sale. Borgos yelled at 18 to get herself and his friends out of there, as he fires an enormous mouth beam straight to Cell and 13. Tien can't stand by and launches a huge Shin Kikoho to assist Borgos. They both continue to fire their blasts repeatedly as the ground and the entire mountainside shakes. 16 grabs Gero and jumps back away from the battle, saying that the blasts were far too dangerous for the doctor. When the blasting ceases and the dust settles, both Borgos and Tien pant as they look at their crater, but it did nothing. All they heard was 13 yell out for his lost hat. Suddenly, Super 13 appeared in front of the two fighters. He punched them both in the gut and knocked out Borgos out of Super Saiyan in an instant. He then slams their heads together just like he did before and threw them over to the mountain forest. Super 13 turns around and yells at Cell, asking if he's alright. Cell limps out of the crater after finishing his regeneration. Super 13 says that it's time to track down 18, but to their surprise, Vegeta and Trunks arrive at the scene. Cell laughs, asking if he really thinks the prince could stand a chance. Vegeta confidently states that he's going to kill him and his boyfriend right away. He powers up into Super Saiyan and rushes at Cell. Super 13 attempts to intervene, but he's stopped by Trunks, who coldly tells the machine that he'll be his opponent this time. Super Vegeta battles with semi-perfect Cell, similarly to how it went in canon. Vegeta dominates the android. Additionally, Super 13 is getting destroyed by Trunks. Gero looks in shock and fear. He damned the world and yelled out that this is not how it's supposed to end. If only they had found 18 in time, if only Cell could achieve his perfect form. Vegeta hears this and slowly flies towards him. He asks what this perfect form is and if it would be a real challenge. A sinister smile from the old man's face comes. He tells Vegeta that if Cell were to absorb 18, that he'd face an opponent like no other. This convinces Vegeta and agrees to help locate Android 18. Trunks begs his father to listen to reason and attempts to stop Cell, but this time both Super 13 and Vegeta prevent him from intervening. He yells at 13 that he doesn't need help from scrap metal as he blasts down an SS deadly bomber that consumes Trunks. The doctor and his creations locate 18, hiding behind a waterfall. With no way to escape, she yells out at 16 for help. 16 looks on as the cries of 18 are being ignored. 16 clenches his fist and Cell absorbs 18. The area is engulfed in blinding white light as Perfect Cell is born. Trunks looks on in horror and Vegeta fills with excitement. Finally, a worthy challenger. Vegeta smirks as he points his thumb at himself, offering to give Cell a chance. Cell obliges, beating the lights out of Vegeta. Trunks transforms into Grade 3, getting in the way of the fight, but this isn't nearly enough to take on Perfect Cell. 13 and the injured heroes look in disbelief. Gero laughs maniacally. This was his ultimate android. 13 glared at him, then looked back. back. Nothing could stop him now. Cell finished beating on Trunks and throws him to the feet of his father, bored at the performance they displayed. Tora had felt enough, asking Shugesh to take him over there. They needed to buy enough time for Goku and Gohan to finish their training. Even if they're killed, they were the only hope. Shugesh told everyone to grab on. Tora, Krillin, and a frightened Yamcha grabbed onto Shugesh, locking onto the key of the weakened Trunks. The group arrives on the scene with no chance of winning. They still get into their battle stances. 13 laughs, sweat falls down Krillin's face, and Yamcha gulps. Shugesh grits his teeth and yells out that even if they're going to die, they'll fight for their friends. The remaining Z-Fighters roar as they lunge at Cell and Super 13. It goes about as you expect. As the androids decimate their reinforcements, Super 13 laughs, but Cell doesn't say anything. In fact, he looks rather bored. Tora notices that Cell isn't satisfied with the battle. He's super disappointed that these weak fighters showed up. He was expecting Goku instead, but he had Krillin and Yamcha. He received all this power, and this was the resistance he gets? Tora continues getting smacked by Cell as 13 throws around Yamcha by the leg, but Cell looks like he's ready to kill them all. Tora weakly asks a question, saying, "Are you really okay with ending things like this?" Cell asks what that means, and Tora smiles, coughing up some blood. He explains that he may not be really smart, he knows that he's got Saiyan genes inside of him. He feels it. The need for battle, the need to fight strong opponents, and push by his limits, to fight a real challenge. 13 comes up behind Cell, telling him to get this over with, but Cell puts a hand to stop 13, telling Tora to go on. The Saiyan casts the bait. He tells the bio-android that if he gives them a few days, Cell will be able to face a real challenge, a powered-up Goku that would finally be able to give him a real thrill. Hell, give him a few days and everyone there could defeat him. Then they'll have a true battle like nothing they've ever seen before. Gero yells from afar, asking out loud what's taking his creation Sora on the floor, and walking over to Gero, telling him the idea. Gero laughs. This was a perfect plan, and it would give him time to upgrade 13 to meet these new challenges. He told them that they would make a special announcement soon, to be on the lookout. He then ordered 16, 13, and Cell to take him to a specific location.
Hey kids, don't go away. We'll be right back.
I hope you guys are enjoying the video, and if you like the stuff I do, there's a way you can support the channel. By clicking the membership button, you will be able to see various tiers. Each one of them has some rewards. My personal favorite ones are the Super Saiyan hair badges that adorn your name in comments and live streams on my channel. The longer you stay a member, the larger the power up. So if you like the stuff I do and feel like supporting me in some way, be sure to check out the membership. Anyways, back to the show.
Back to our show.
The only one that was still conscious was Trunks, and with what little energy he had left, he took his father up to the lookout. He could barely stand, and asked Mr. Popo to take everyone up. They only had a few days. Dende healed them both. Every single fighter felt utterly defeated, and a looming sense of dread overshadowed any progress they made. Super 13 was powerful, but Cell, he was on an entirely different level, and that 16 guy, who knows how powerful he is? No doubt Gero was going to upgrade at least 13, since he had gotten damaged. Everyone was left speechless, except for Goku and Gohan, who stepped out of the chamber. He seemed calm. Everyone informed him, but he didn't seem worried. Goku puts his hands on Yamcha and Krillin, thanking them for their bravery and for standing up for their friends. He also looked at Tora and Shugesh, nodding. This reminds Tora of his conversation with Cell. The remaining fighters will go into the Room of Spirit and Time, and Goku can go as many times as he wants. He's their only hope. Goku tells Tora that he and Gohan will be taking it easy for the next few days, but he wishes everyone luck. Before anyone can ask why, Fascia grabs Piccolo and drags him into the room, saying adamantly that she'll never be weak again. Shugesh laughs. Poor Nail. Later that day, they all head to Capsule Corp to check on Bulma's progress with Ader. Fascia's being very attentive to the operation. It'll be interesting to see how advanced Earthling technology is compared to the rest of the universe. Meanwhile, Krillin turns on the TV in the waiting room, and Gohan switches channels until seeing breaking news. Just like Gero had promised, he and his creations hijacked 3 different news stations, ZTV, Super TV, and GTTV, to announce the Red Ribbon World Tournament. Whoever wins the tournament will be given the honor to face against Cell and 13, along with a chance to live in the new world order. They finish their announcements by destroying the news station. The heroes looked on in fear, but Goku reassures them that it'll be okay. The following week, the remaining Z-Fighters went in and out of the Room of Spirit and Time. Fascia and Piccolo trained intensely during their time there, and Piccolo grew closer with her, acknowledging her progress, and Fascia hugged him tightly. Piccolo blushed. He didn't really understand her feelings, but maybe not even his own at this point. He thought to himself whether this was the nail in him, or if it was really Piccolo. He kept it to himself, but Fascia smiled. Piccolo and Fascia left the chamber the following day. Everyone was amazed at the power they accumulated. They were leagues above what they were yesterday. Tora also noticed something else. Fascia and Piccolo acting a little different. It was weird. Borgos laughs, and Shugesh demands to know what the hell's happening. Tora shakes his head. Afterwards, Shugesh and Tora went into the chamber. Shugesh taught Tora what he knew about spirit control, along with helping him further refine his Super Saiyan state. Tora was amazed by what the Yardrat had taught him, and wondered if amplifying his ki with this new technique would make his attacks strong enough to harm Cell. By the end of it, he could teleport as well. Shortly after they departed the chamber, Borgos decided to go in next, but he didn't have a partner. After seeing the bravery he displayed during the final attacks against the androids, Borgos asked Tien if he'd like to be his partner. Tien gladly accepts. Their training provided them incredible results as well, with Tien even learning a few Namekian techniques. Borgos enjoyed teaching others the techniques of his family, as he wondered if he could teach the Namekian warriors back home how to go beyond their limits as well. During the time before the Cell games, Tora chooses to chill out a little more with Gohan and Goku, while the others train. He didn't know why, but he could tell that Goku had something under his sleeve. Shugesh isn't having any of it, and wants them to keep training, not only for Cell, for whatever this Majin guy was, but nothing really gets through to them. Goku tells Shugesh that overworking their bodies with any more high-intensity training will just make things worse. Reluctantly, Shugesh concedes. Maybe they should rest a bit. Chi-Chi even invites the older Saiyans to a picnic with their family. They all had a lot of fun. Eating with Goku and his friends reminded Tora of their times together with Bardock. This was the peace they were fighting for. This was the peace that Bardock died for. Tora asked his friends quietly about Gohan. They all agreed that they had never really seen or heard a Saiyan as young as him becoming as strong as he is, as a Super Saiyan already. They all saw the power he had during that battle against Frieza and the androids. Tora stares at Gohan, who is laughing happily with his dad. What if he was stronger than his father? Meanwhile, Gero had Cell, 16, and 13 built a tournament arena within the old ruins of the Red Ribbon Army base, the one that Goku had destroyed. He also fixed up and upgraded Android 13. He was a lot stronger now, and even included the absorption mechanism that he and number 19 had. Eventually, 10 days passed, and the day of fate arrived. Bulma and Fascia had finally finished studying Ader. Not only did they remove the bomb, but they also created a remote control tuned to Android 13. Bulma said that if it was tuned to the twins, they would have most likely blown up, but 13's hardware was so different from the twins, or Ader, that they weren't even sure what would happen. At best, she reasoned that the remote would only be able to short-circuit him. After all, she wasn't even sure if there was a bomb within him. She advised Krillin and the rest to use it as a last resort. Bulma also gave Trunks the hilt of his broken sword. She wasn't able to fix it in time, but Trunks thanked her for keeping it safe. He grabbed onto it and placed it on the sheath on his back. The Z-Fighters gathered together at the spot Dr. Gero had chosen as the grounds for the tournament, the ruins of the former Red Ribbon Army. In the courtyard of the destroyed facility was a large white marble ring. Dr. Gero stood tall in front of his most powerful creations. 13 and 16 stood side by side with the Doctor, standing tall as his guards, while Cell positioned himself in the center of the ring. Surrounding him were 5 small blue creatures that looked just like him, Cell Juniors. The remaining Z-Fighters arrived, with an impatient Fascia firing a blast at Dr. Gero, only for it to be slammed away by Android 16. The Doctor told everyone to calm down, that everything will come in due time. Gero welcomes everyone as the world news watches. Gero sits down on his makeshift throne, explaining the rules. There were too many fighters, so first they would have to have preliminary rounds, fighting amongst themselves before fighting Gero's finest creations. The warriors will choose their best. Mr. Satan burst through the gates, throwing his cape over Shugesh. The pompous man laughed loudly, proclaiming the defeat of this Gyro Doctor and the trucker. Gero simply lifted his shoulders and allowed him to enter. Every circus needs a clown after all. After some deliberation amongst the fighters, a lineup of their best were chosen. The preliminary matches were as follows: Tora vs Trunks, Goku vs Vegeta, Gohan vs Piccolo, Fascia vs Mr. Satan. The first battle was Tora and Trunks. The older Saiyan recognized that Trunks was the stronger fighter between the two, and respects him greatly, but he makes him promise not to go easy on him. He wants a true battle. Glancing over at Gohan, the tournament began, with both fighters clashing in the middle of the ring. Cell keeps his eyes closed. Trunks caught Tora's arm and threw him to the ground. What he didn't expect was Tora using instant transmission to disappear behind Trunks, grabbing him by the armor and slamming him down. Shugesh had taught him some Yardrian tricks while in the time chamber. Shugesh even had time to further refine his spirit control and finally master some more advanced techniques. Trunks responded instantly, spinning on his back to trip over Tora. Tora jumped to his feet, but was met with Trunks bursting into Super Saiyan just for a second and being blasted out of bounds. Next up was the fight which Cell finally opened his eyes for. Vegeta versus Goku. The two stepped up to the ring, silent, without even saying a word. Both turned into Super Saiyans. In that instant, every camera in the venue exploded, while Dr. Gero was protected by 16 from the various pieces of rubble that flew everywhere. Mr. Satan couldn't believe what he was watching. When Goku stepped out of the chamber, he had commented that Vegeta was still way too weak. He was going to prove him wrong. However, though Goku wanted to enjoy the battle to the max, he knew that he had to win. He had to advance to the next round. At one point, Goku and Vegeta reached a stalemate in the center of the ring, pushing each other. Vegeta slammed his head against Goku, sending him back. He was about to fire a final flash. It's too dangerous, there's civilians everywhere. So without much of a choice, Goku responded with his own Kamehameha. Goku didn't want to overwhelm Vegeta, but he had no choice. As soon as the blast crashed, the Kamehameha ate the final flash, and Vegeta was sent spiraling out of the arena. Shugesh heals them both, having just mastered the Yardrian technique in the Room of Spirit and Time to heal. Vegeta shoves him off at first, though eventually he lets himself be healed. Vegeta was furious. Not at Goku, but at himself. Kakarot was right, he was still weaker than him. Shugesh could feel the anger and loathing festering within Vegeta. He was worried now more than ever that the prince was going to go down a dark path. He saw it in himself once before. If they survive this, he'll do anything he can to save Prince Vegeta. Gohan and Piccolo were next. Piccolo was very proud of his student, and now Gohan had to prove to his master that he could stand on his own as a warrior who didn't need to be saved. This was a rite of passage. Piccolo goes up to Gohan and asks if he's sure he wants to fight. Gohan is hesitant, but looks over at his father, Trunks, and Tora. He nodded at Piccolo. The two began as they both took off their capes. They could predict each other's moves perfectly. Piccolo brought up every single technique he hadn't used in a while, stretching his arms, using multiform, Hellzone grenades, even a special beam cannon. To his surprise, Gohan had counters for nearly every one of these, and he defeats Piccolo by grabbing his outstretched arm and sending him out of the ring. The last preliminary round was Fascia versus Mr. Satan. She had no patience for this, and instantly rushed in against him. Before he could finish gloating, she flicked him on the head and was sent flying off. Anyways, now it was time for the real battles. Goku wanted to go first, facing off against Android 16. Then it would be Fascia versus Cell, 13 versus Trunks, and finally Gohan versus Cell Jr. Gohan was a little embarrassed to be put up against a just then created fighter. Goku smirked at 16, explaining that he's gotten a lot stronger since the last time they met. He better not pull any punches. 16 didn't respond. The fight started like the first one, with Goku firing a blast which 16 reflected. The android rushed up to Goku, grabbing him to slam him down. However, this time Goku spins and kicks 16 in the face. Goku uses After Image to appear to be everywhere, until firing a Kamehameha at 16's face. The android didn't expect it, and he barely dodges out of the way, but he's immediately punched in the face by Goku, who sends him crashing down towards the arena. 16 stands back up, and before he can even think, Goku rushes towards him, continuing to attack with a meteor combination. Each punch sends a minor shockwave over the arena. As Goku finishes the combo with a powerful blow in the gut, 16 staggers back. It seems like a giant would fall. He stands back up and makes eye contact with Goku. Even to Goku's surprise, 16 smirks. Goku talked to him during the battle, saying that he didn't seem like a bad guy, and he promised to get 18 and 17 out from within Cell. In response, 16 stopped all the punches and looked at Goku. He asked if the Saiyan promised, and Goku nodded. Nobody heard this. They simply whispered it. 16 smiled and took off his arm to fire a cannon blast at Goku. The Saiyan disappeared and appeared behind 16, grabbing onto him and slamming him outside of the ring. He was going to get back up, his programming to kill Goku kicking in, but Cell put his hand out, stopping him. Gero raised an eyebrow. Why was his creation telling his son what to do? Next up is Cell versus Fascia. Finally, the ultimate android would get to show off a little bit. He wasn't going to go easy on her. Fascia counted on that. Fascia burst into her Super Saiyan form and relentlessly attacked Cell. Every punch pushed him further and further back. It seemed as if Cell wasn't able to dodge her flurry of blows. Fascia chuckled. She was going to win, but Cell merely laughed. Was that all she had? Cell grabbed onto Fascia's hair and slammed his knee against her face, similarly to how she had defeated Android 19. The Saiyan was disoriented from that single attack, and Cell threw her up to the sky with his fingers. He slashed upwards, cutting Fascia sharply, blood and pieces of armor raining into the ring. The attack was so intense that it knocked Fascia back down to her base form. The Saiyans couldn't simply stand by and watch this, could they? Tora clenched his fist, looking over at Borgos and Shigesh, but it was Piccolo who stepped up and stopped the attack from continuing to hit Fascia. Piccolo gathered all his energy into a karate chop that slammed the unsuspecting Cell in the back of the neck. Cell was sent across the arena. Piccolo then flew up to catch the falling Fascia. Cell yelled at Piccolo to go away. He was already out of the tournament. He used his telekinesis to bring Piccolo crashing down to the ground. A furious Fascia went over to him, grabbing him by the gi, demanding to know why he stopped their match. Piccolo pushed her off, saying that he wasn't just going to stand by and watch her die. Fascia stopped as she told him thanks. But before them, 3 figures appeared: Shigesh, Borgos, and Tora. They looked back at Piccolo, saying, "Not to worry, Nail, we've got this." Piccolo's eyes widened and Fascia stood by them. All of them but Shigesh transformed into Super Saiyans and rushed in at Cell. The bio-android happily declared that if this is what they wanted, then it's now a free-for-all. He pointed his arm out forward, and the Cell Juniors, along with Android 13, rushed in at the rest of the fighters. It was an all-out brawl, where the heroes were on the losing end. Cell takes all 4 Saiyans on easily. Even if they've gotten stronger, they stand a little chance against him. At times he has some trouble because of their numbers. And Tora and Shigesh's teleporting was rather annoying, but one by one they were taken down. They had no choice but to fall back. Gero stopped it all by screaming that this was his tournament, his chance to show the world the might of the Red Ribbon Army. There will be order. That's when he felt a blast hit the side of his head. A Cell Jr. had blasted at him and nearly blown him to pieces. Gero looked at him in fear and then back at Cell. Why hadn't he stopped the Cell Jr. from attacking? Cell stepped towards the doctor, explaining that he was a malevolent android and that he only wanted what was best for the doctor. Being in this imperfect body, existing as a mere brain in a robotic jar, was disgusting. He was going to do him a favor and send him to a better place. He would do that for everyone, actually. He was very generous. Cell raised up a hand and aimed it at Dr. Gero. That's when 13 and 16 stepped in the way. Cell smirked. This was going to be fun. He told the Cell Juniors to attack the Z-Fighters once more, while he took care of the scrap metal. The tournament had turned into a war zone. Blasts flew everywhere as the sounds and yells of explosions filled the arena. 16 and 13 proved to be a lot more trouble than the Saiyans. 13 absorbed some of Cell's energy, and this angered him greatly, slapping 13 far off. Cell began to take steps towards Gero, and 16 took this chance to jump on Cell's back. Cell was trying to shove him off, while 16 yelled at Dr. Gero to run away, but Gero knew what he was doing. He begged 16 not to do it. He couldn't stand to watch his son die again, even calling him Gebo, his own son's name. But it was too late. 16 was going to explode. Goku, Tora, and Shigesh grabbed onto whoever they could and teleported away. They were able to save all the fighters, including Mr. Satan. Gero's eyes filled with tears as he watched Android 16 smile at him. The Z-Fighters looked back and watched as the Red Ribbon Army base exploded in an enormous mushroom cloud, and even from that far away, they were pushed back. The Z-Fighters returned to the arena. Nothing was left. But wait, Cell was there. He was regenerating. That hadn't done the trick. And Android 13 was standing over where Dr. Gero once stood. But without Gero, what could he do? It was as if something snapped within him. He was no longer a slave to his programming. He had individuality. He now wanted to prove who was the true perfect android. He turned to look at the regenerating Cell. The bio-android sped towards him, telling him to wait. They can battle later. They first need to take care of the trash. He looked around. The Cell Juniors were gone. It was only the both of them. This wasn't over yet. Goku, Gohan, and Bardock's squad rushed in towards Cell, but it was as if him regenerating only made him stronger. Goku told Tora and the rest to back off. They were already far too damaged. And although they fought together, Goku noticed that Gohan was struggling. He wasn't pushing himself all the way. Meanwhile, everyone else fought against Super Android 13. Trunks was glad to get another opportunity at the fighter. Gohan slowly begins to reveal a little bit more of his power, which surprises everyone except for Goku and Tora. Piccolo and the other fighters work together to deal significant blows on 13, but every time they get too close, their energy's absorbed. Cell wants Gohan to take the battle seriously and show him his true power, so in order to get Gohan angry, Cell decides to go all out. First, it's Goku, and is about to kill him right in front of Gohan, but he stopped when a blast hits the side of his head. It was Dr. Gero. He was incredibly damaged. His arms were destroyed. His skin was blown off. It was just a robotic metal exoskeleton underneath. Cell asked the doctor how the hell he survived. When 16 self-destructed, Gero attempted to absorb the incoming blast. It worked. It lessened the impact, but he was gravely injured, and his hands exploded, and he was sent flying off. He told the doctor he'd put an end to his mystery, and he plans to keep his word. Gero shouts angrily that he should have never built these androids. He now sees that his desire for revenge cost him too much. his humanity, his son, if he wasn't so focused on his ego, on his hatred. 16. No, his son would still be alive. Cell's smile turned into a frown. He can't believe all of this asinine drivel spewing from the doctor's mouth. He's starting to sound like one of these foolish humans. Cell drops Goku as he suddenly appears in front of Gero, picking him up and locking him into a bear hug. Cell is going to crush Gero to death. With his final words, Gero pleads to Goku and Gohan to stop his creation and save the world his son loved so dearly. Then, crack. A loud snap echoed through the devastated landscape. Everyone looked at Cell. He let go, and the arms of the lifeless body of Dr. Gero slumped down towards the ground. Goku was angry. Cell didn't have to kill him. He was helpless. But Gohan, he was absolutely livid. Despite everything Gero had done, Gohan couldn't help but empathize with him. He just wanted his son back, and Cell took that away from him. He was tired of seeing all this death. Gohan unleashed a mighty roar that echoed across the barren wasteland. His hair spiked up, lightning danced around his aura. Gohan had ascended beyond. Before he realized it, Cell was punched. From then on, it was all a blur. Gohan uppercutted Cell up to the sky and blasted him up. He punched him so hard back down that it created a crater. It didn't matter if this thing was perfect. If he was a super perfect Cell, didn't matter. Super 13 and the remaining heroes are in disbelief. The battle resumes as Gohan yells at Cell that he won't get away with this. Super 13 realizes that he's just wasting time and returns to fighting the remaining Z fighters. In a strange twist of events, Gohan and Cell punch each other, their fists clashing. In that moment, both their arms broke. Both of them staggered back. They had to end this quickly. All the sound around Gohan disappeared for a second. All he could focus on was Cell saying Kame. Gohan responded immediately with his own Kamehameha. Goku and Piccolo's eyes widened. This was the moment. Goku jumped behind his son, putting an arm where Gohan's other arm should be, supporting the Kamehameha. But even this doesn't seem to be enough. Tora sees that Goku and Gohan are in trouble, but Super 13 won't let him or anyone else interfere in Cell's battle. Suddenly, Fascia, Shugesh, Borgos, Vegeta, and Trunks grab onto Super 13, restraining him. Shugesh yells at him to go. Tora thanks everyone, flying off to the site of the beam struggle, transforming one last time into a Super Saiyan. Tora looks at the massive clash before him. He's momentarily overwhelmed at the level of power and display. He wonders if he can even do anything against such an overwhelming monster. This is how Bardock must have felt when he tried to stand up against Frieza. Alone. Helpless. He looked over at Goku and Gohan, and for a second, a mirage of someone else appeared behind them. Someone familiar to Tora, and it looked like they locked eyes. He could recognize that scar anywhere. Bardock was behind them all this whole time. He didn't know if this was real, but it was the motivation he needed. Tora grits his teeth and shakes his head before looking at his hand. No, he wasn't alone. His family, friends, everyone was there, fighting together for a better tomorrow. Images of Bardock, Fascia, Shugesh, Borgos, Gohan, Goku, Nail, Dende, Trunks, Vegeta, Krillin, even the Grand Elder. Those images flooded into his mind as a ball of dense ki formed in his hand. Tora gathers every ounce of ki into his body, amplifying it with spirit control. Bardock may not have been able to change the future, but his squad will. His family will. Tora yells out, everything. Launching Bardock's signature move, the Rayo Javelin. It explodes on contact, and the force of the blast was enough to hurt Cell. He looked around to see Tora shaking in midair, smiling before falling to the ground. Cell curses at Tora, and in that moment, he let his guard down. Goku, Gohan, and maybe even Bardock use this opening to unleash all their power. The Kamehameha engulfs Cell as the ultimate life form is finally defeated. Goku and Gohan collapse to the ground, dropping to their base forms. They couldn't move anymore. Tora couldn't either. The heroes celebrate briefly before an SS deadly bomber strikes from above. Super 13 was still alive. Krillin tries to take out the remote control and use it, but 13 recognizes what he's doing. He lunges at Krillin as the remote control falls from his hand onto the rubble below. The other fighters tried to retrieve it, but they were stopped at every turn by 13. He's able to easily sweep aside nearly all the remaining fighters. The heroes lay on the ground, injured, near death, as Super 13 laughs triumphantly. He had finally proven to himself to be the ultimate android after all. He declared that he's going to kill everyone before destroying the entire planet. However, from the scattered bodies and beaten fighters, a single hero weakly stands up. Trunks. Despite his various injuries and shaky legs, Trunks picked himself back up. No. There's no way I'd let you androids destroy another timeline. I won't let you. I'll keep fighting for my future. For their future. As long as I keep breathing. Super 13 stares at him before smiling. He could easily change that. Trunks and Super 13 rush at each other, slamming their fists against one another, creating enormous shockwaves. The only thing the worn down heroes could do was lay there and watch. Everyone from Goku to Tora and the other fighters tried to stand up as well, but they just couldn't, no matter how hard they tried. Trunks tries his best against the behemoth, but he's starting to lose the second wind. Super 13 catches a punch from Trunks and kicks his arm in. Trunks howls in pain as 13 prepares to land a finishing blow. Vegeta looks on at his son. He was about to get killed right in front of him. No. Shugesh puts a hand on Vegeta's shoulder. You could see the rage within him, but he was trying to get him to channel it onto something positive, just telling him to save his son. Vegeta's rage reached the tipping point as his fury explodes, launching himself off the ground and tackling 13 away from Trunks. Fueled by this anger towards himself and his feelings to protect his son, Vegeta has entered a berserk rage. Goku looked over at Trunks. The time traveler had broken his arm and was clearly on his last legs, but despite this, he somehow found the strength to stand back up. Goku remembered back to when he first saw Gohan's potential many years ago. Trunks had the same potential within him, he just needed an extra little boost. Goku had an idea, yelling at everyone to give as much ki as possible to Trunks while they still can. The Earthlings, the Saiyans, and Piccolo stretched their arms out, giving energy, every single last drop of ki inside of them. It almost seems like it's not going to be enough for a second, until Gohan lifts his arm up. A little wave of ki runs up to Trunks. His eyes sparkle, energy coursing through his veins. While Vegeta does his best to hold back 13, Trunks returns and manages to deal one clean punch at the robot. Unlike before, Super 13 is finally starting to lose his ground. The combined efforts of this father and son pair was simply astonishing. 13 sees that there's no chance of him to win, so he grabs on tightly to Trunks and sets up a barrier. He laughs maniacally, saying that if he's going to die, he's going to take Trunks with him. He prepares to activate the bomb inside of him, and he roars. Nothing happens. 13 is shocked. Why isn't his bomb going off? He looks around and spots the injured Krillin from inside a crater, chuckling weakly while he's pressing down the button on the remote control.
Oh no, you're not getting off that easy. That was for 18.
Super 13 sweats, while Trunks breaks free from 13's grab and punches him in the gut. Vegeta, still enraged, begins to pound at the barrier rapidly with his bloody knuckles. He screams out that he should never underestimate the Saiyans, shattering the barrier like glass. 13 panics and yells at them to stay back. He starts setting up even more barriers as Trunks holds up his broken sword. Vegeta grabs onto the sword, looking up at his son, telling him that they'll do it together. Trunks nods and stares at 13.
Tell me, 13, do androids feel fear?
Vegeta and Trunks poured every ounce of ki onto the sword. With all the energy Trunks had been given to, plus Vegeta, the sword begins to shine bright as it looks like the blade is being completed, piercing through the android barrier and stabbing through 13. All the ki in the sword immediately shot out onto 13, who gets sliced in half and explodes. Finally, it was over. The threat of the androids was done. Walked up to Gohan and gave him a thumbs up. In reality, he was really looking at his master, thanking him for his help. Soon afterwards, everyone met at the lookout, wishing for everyone that was killed by Cell to be brought back to life, except for the bad guys, of course. Krillin also wished for the bombs within 18 and 17 to be removed as well. Everyone thanked each other. This had been a crazy adventure, but they were glad it's finally over. Goku hugged Chi-Chi tightly, thanking her for her patience and that he was sorry that she had almost been kidnapped. In fact, their last wish was to bring back Goku's home. It had been destroyed after all. Soon after, everybody started to say goodbye. Tien explained that he'd probably not see them for a long time. And Shugesh? Well, he wanted to explore space a bit more. He made everyone promise that they would continue training for the arrival. When Trunks was about to leave, Tora offered to go with him, but Borgo stopped him, saying that Bardock's family really needed him around. So instead, he would go with. He would help rebuild the future, and maybe eventually even go to future Namek. Spent a little time there before returning. Tora asked if his friend was sure about this, and he was. He wanted to help rebuild Trunks' future with him. He was very proud of this boy. Trunks reluctantly agreed, but he knew that they would need help. The time machine disappeared. Back at the present, Piccolo and Fascia began to roam the Earth, just as they had done before. But this time, Piccolo didn't find her as annoying. and they were at the very least challenging opponents for one another. Goku invited Tora to live with him, but he said that he liked another place a little better. He ended up living at the lookout with Mr. Popo and Dende. He already knew Dende for a long time from before Frieza's attack, and he asked Mr. Popo what he could do to help. He wanted to be part of Earth. He wanted to help Dende and protect Bardock's family. And so, Dende sits on Tora's shoulder, looking down from the lookout. He's watching over everything on Earth, but Tora focuses in on one small house, Kakarot's home. He smiled, thinking of his friend, Bardock. He promised that he would continue to keep his family safe as much as he could. Thank you so much for watching, guys. This was part 4 of What If Bardock's Squad Survived. I really hope you enjoyed it. I've never had to divide a saga into 2 like this, I don't think, but this was a huge project. Thanks to Professor Chimp, him and I co-authored this one. This was just a huge passion project. We really got into the groove of things with this one. It's so much fun, and thank you to Rajmain for editing these. He does an amazing job, especially with the action scenes. Shout out to the Super Saiyan God and Super Saiyan Legend members of the channel. Darko Roktansky, Jin1412, Obi-Wan Fun, Midnight Combatant, Fox Die, Eric Dragon, The Real Samuel Randall, Anthony Note, and Zachary Croy. Thank you so much, guys, for keeping the channel afloat. The day this video goes out, I will also be posting for the Super Saiyan God members the next script. If you guys didn't know, Super Saiyan God members get access to old scripts that I've written just to see how the process and some behind the scenes stuff. It's a small thing. I'm still trying to figure out what else I can do to make you guys' membership worthwhile. If you have any ideas, I'm always willing to hear you guys out. But if you want to get your name shouted out like these guys, be sure to click the join button down below and check the options out. I'm really trying to work on a few what ifs right now because over the summer I'm not going to be able to work as much. So I'm trying to get some of the ones I'm planning on doing for that time are: what if Gogeta and Vegeta fought? What if Goku and Caulifla were siblings? What if Bardock's squad survived part 5? And some other ones. If you have any ideas, be sure to comment them down below. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and until we meet again, see ya!
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to SmugStick, unless you want to be destroyed.
Lord Beerus, that's hardly fair. But also, don't forget to click the bell icon to get notified when he uploads new videos.